I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We will start once again with public comment. We may have some people that have called in that were expecting to see Representative Berthiaume with us, and they may want to comment before we get going. If anybody's...
I do know that Sam Lipson's here for public comment.
I'm not too concerned about Sam right now. I'm looking for any other people that may have called in to ask about the cable access.
If anyone is here for that, you can raise your hand. We have Deb here. Thank you, Deb. If you could unmute yourself.
Hi there. I was just calling in. I live on Jewett Road, one of the towns in Barre that still does not have one of the roads in Barre that doesn't have internet or cable. And just again, voicing my concerns that in this day and age, everyone in our town should have access. Once again, I had to go to my in-laws' house in order to come to this meeting because I cannot support doing a meet like this on my hot pack or hot jetpack thing from the cellular company. I'm a teacher, so if we happen to go remote again, I will be teaching from my in-laws' house, which is not good in the winter. Have to drive on snow days to get somewhere so that I can teach my students. So if there's anything that the town can do to allocate more funds or to look into other ways to solve this problem, I would greatly appreciate it. And I know that all the people that live on my road would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. And do we have anyone else that's called in? Because there was a lot of interest when I mentioned to some people that Representative Berthiaume would be here. And yeah. Can you guys still see me? My screen is all messed up.
We can see you.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, well, I can't see anybody else, so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I do have one more phone number with their hand raised to speak on this, so.
Sure.
Thank you for calling in. If you could just identify yourself before speaking. Thank you.
Looks like they're gone.
All right, I found it back here. We have quite a few participants, so I see, huh? No, just 1 of 7 panels. Okay. So originally, I don't know if you guys noticed, I talked to Representative Berthiaume and he would plan to come on tonight. He said he talked to Matt before about cable access in town, and he was looking forward to joining us for a meeting and discussing it. But he wound up double booking himself and had to back out. Unfortunately, he just did that over the weekend. So we've got a plan to have him back in our meeting on the 4th, and he said he should be able to attend that. So for those that have tuned in or called in in regards to the discussion of the cable access, we'll be having a discussion on the 4th of January, and hopefully Representative Berthiaume will be here with us. Briefly, it is an ongoing issue for us. We have asked for funds at the town meeting. We have not spent any funds as of yet because we are still trying to find an avenue to get the most bang for our buck on this. And that's what Representative Berthiaume is going to hopefully help us do, be find grants or find avenues or maybe have influence. With the cable company, I really don't know where that's going to go yet. Matt or Dylan, do you have any comment on that?
I have no new information on that topic.
I just wanted to reiterate that part of the goal here in my mind was not just to try to provide coverage for those roads that don't have cable on their road, but also to look at key areas of town where we may want to look at upgrading our service from our current up to a fiber optic or similar. Part of that will additionally, well, part of the benefit to that could come to either our industrial or commercial properties, because it will create a better value and create a better opportunity for people to increase possibly leasing out properties to other people that, or businesses that could use that if they have good internet. And right now, if all we've got is not quite a business class level of internet access, it's not the same.
I won't have any counter talk to that. Dylan, do you want to make any comment before we move on for that at all?
No, I'm looking forward to hearing from Rep. Berthiaume on the 4th, so certainly.
We really didn't list it as a specific agenda, so I don't want to have much banter, but since I did introduce why I was having them on, I want to make sure you guys got a chance to comment, and we'll delve further into this in 2 weeks. First thing on our agenda will be the continuance of the public hearing for the liquor license hearing. So does this mean they're ready?
Yes, I did see. Yes, Sue is here, so let me bring her on. Hi, Sue.
Hi,
Good evening.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? No?
Not yet.
No,
I don't know why. I can see everybody, but I don't see me there. You can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Usually there's a little icon on the bottom left to turn your camera on and off if you move your mouse down there. Well, no bother. We'll move on. We don't need to see you, Susan.
Okay.
All right. We have, gentlemen, as you recall, we started this process and she wasn't quite ready to be in front of us at the last meeting. So Jessica says she has everything ready. So we're looking to approve the liquor license for a basically sip and paint. Is that correct?
Yes.
Up in the center of town on Pleasant Street.
Yes.
You guys have any comments or discussion, or do you want to make a motion?
I do have a comment. It's a bummer. It seems to be more a procedural thing, but looking at the form, the affidavit of notice of mailing to abutters and others, I think she accidentally identified herself as the abutter.
No.
Barry Arts and I, Susan Mason, hereby certify the following is a true list of persons shown upon the assessor's most recent valuation list as the owners of the property abutting the proposed location at, and there's no other names included. So you're the only name on the list.
Well, there was only a short place to put a name. There was 12 others, the butters. Where was I supposed to put all those names?
It may have been better to submit as like an attachment, something like see attachment, and just provide a list of abutters.
Well, I could put that in the mail tomorrow. Because I sent everybody a certified letter.
I'm not denying it, and that's why I said it's just a procedural thing, and I'm not trying to stop this because of that.
Mhm.
But maybe Jessica has a suggestion.
Yeah, I'll clarify this. So she did send all of the little certified mail-ins, but I wasn't going to scan each one in individually just because of my scanner. The way it works is you have to like put the paper through, and so the size of those little mailers weren't going to fit through it. So I can assure you all that she did send all of those certified mailers, and they're in my office.
Okay.
As long as you actually have the list, that's what the document is saying is attached. And people will be able to see that later if they want to.
In the meantime, I'm getting back, I did, so that they have to sign for it. So I'm getting back all the signed, the green cards, the receipts that they received it.
Okay.
Not only did I send it certified, but, return.
All right, and Jessica's saying she has those, copy of your mailing receipts, so that will satisfy, the board. Licenses are always revocable. If something came up and there was some issue or something was wrong, we could always revoke, so I'm not overly concerned, about, misleading here. I think we're fine and ready to go.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for me?
I think we asked most of them last time, but
Really? I do want to tell everybody that I have a library box on West Street. We can pick up a book. So for the winter, I took out all the books, but I did put in, they're all sealed, new, I bought them new. They're arts and crafts for children. So if you want to spread the word that there's arts and crafts in there, each contains 12 arts and crafts, so one per family would be good, so that the kids have some things to do over Christmas.
and is this just a gift you're doing for folks? Is there a donation?
No, just whatever if they want it, they can have it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And you just let them all know yourself.
Yeah, but I mean, just spreading the word.
Sure. Jessica, maybe you could put something up on the town's page for that.
Yeah, I bought a big bulk last year of like make your own mittens and gingerbread man and Santa Claus stuff. So they have little eyes and feet and stuff like that, so they can have fun doing that at home.
Sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I'd be looking for a motion.
Do we have any abutters attending that have comment on this?
If anybody's here to comment on the public hearing, you can raise your hand now.
Yeah, I'm not going to entertain those at this point. I'm going to start with a motion.
Deny them, Greg.
I know when we have a motion, a second, I'll look for more comment on this. I'm making sure we're done first before I move on. So,
I
Jessica,
apologize.
appreciate that, but we'll not do that at this point.
I make a motion that we accept the liquor license application for the Sip and Paint as requested by Barre Art Center.
I'll second that motion.
All right, I have a motion to second to approve the liquor license here for the Barre Art Center. Do we have any further discussion or public comment at this time? So folks, raise your hand if you have a comment or signal so Jessica can see it. We'll wait just a minute. And if anybody wants to check the chats, I see something in the chat. Let's see, a question and answer. Discuss cable. Okay. Okay, so that wasn't in regards to this. Okay, having no further comment, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor?
Dylan Clark, yes.
Matt Urban, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes.
Again, I apologize, Greg.
It's quite all right. Susan, you should be all set. You can get in touch with Jessica for anything else that you need. I'm sure there will be a nice piece of paper for you soon.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and Jessica.
We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Good evening.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you too.
Okay. Next, we have the chief up for a chief report with Chief Carbone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
That's okay. All right. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to review the situation that we had on December 7th into December 8th with Stetson and get a report to the Board of Selectmen. I know that we have been in chat about this, but I wanted to give a report to the full board. So if you, before I go, do you know, Matt and Dylan, do you know a lot about it or anything about it? You know what I'm talking about?
If I'm correct, it's the two runaways with COVID found, several towns away eventually?
basically that's part of it, yes, Dylan?
Yeah, I understand that there were 2 elopements, and there was a lot of chatter about the specifics going around Facebook, and it would be great to hear the
Right.
full story right from you.
So that's what I'm going to do. So basically, what happened was on Monday night, December 7th. We got a call from. So we had 2 officers on duty. Sergeant Moratorium was the shift supervisor. Got a call from. Well, dispatch got a call from a house on South Street saying that 2 teenagers just showed up at the door asking for a ride and for money, and this is at about 8:23 p.m. So the dispatch and the contacted Stetson, our department contacted Stetson to try and find out if it was, if there were 2 Stetson youth that had gotten away from the property. We had trouble getting through to Stetson through a dispatch, so they left a message. Then Sergeant Moratorium went to Stetson at 8:40 and spoke with Stetson directly, and they said yes, they had 2 missing males. So the at 20:57 hours, SWIFT 911 was put out. That's what everybody is probably aware of. And we knew that Stetson had 2 cars on the road looking for them at that time. But we found out from Stetson that they had gone missing anywhere between 7:40 and 7:48. So they didn't call us. They went out looking for them. But they did not call us. And so the only way we became aware of it was because a citizen called, and Stetson confirmed that the 2 males were COVID positive. So now we have a citizen with 2 COVID positive people on the steps asking for a ride and for money. Fortunately, he turned them away at the door and didn't have close contact. The Board of Health had to get involved to speak to him, to analyze his exposure and determine it wasn't high risk. Anyway, we had to concern ourselves because the temperature was below 30, and we now had them missing for quite some time, and they weren't dressed for the weather. They had sweatshirts on. So we're very concerned about their safety, and we're concerned about the fact that they're COVID positive, and I don't believe they were wearing masks at the door. They're COVID positive, and they're going door to door. So that's another level of concern. So we have 2 levels of concern at this time. The safety of these youth, and then, of course, spreading of COVID throughout town. So we began bringing in mutual aid, and we brought in quite a bit. We brought in State Police K-9. We brought in State Police. We brought in one other trooper. We brought in Hubbardston. We brought in OCAM. We brought in officers from off duty. I came in. We had the deputy chief in, another couple of officers on the road. So we had a lot of guys out there looking, establishing a perimeter and searching. And Stetson had, my understanding is, 2 vehicles out there with maybe a total of 4, but I can't be entirely sure of how many employees were in the cars. Anyway, this went on for a while. We did 2 canine tracks. We got a variety of, a call that maybe they were by the town line. Anyway, this thing went on and on and on. At 11:30, we checked, and Stetson had 1 car on the road. We still had assets all over the place looking in an organized fashion. We called the search off at 1:31 hours, and we just left the 2 officers on shift to search while everything else wrapped up for the night. K-9 was done tracking, and other mutual aid assets had to go back to their towns, take care of their towns. So they kept 2 officers searching throughout the night, and at this point we're very, very concerned about their safety because they'd been out so long in the cold, and we didn't believe that they had a cell phone on them or anything, any way to make contact with anybody. 0700 comes, and we start back up again, a full search, and of course at this point we have a 3-pronged search. We're really concerned about their safety. So we're looking in town, which we were able to determine they're from the Boston area. And we're also worried, so we're looking for missing kids. We're looking for, we're checking Boston to see if they somehow made it there. And then, of course, what if the worst happened? We're also concerned about that. And that's a whole other type of search that we're getting ready to conduct. So 3 different searches. Anyway, so we're bringing in all kinds of assets. We're talking to DCF. So we put 1 officer on the Boston end, and that's Staff Sergeant Brown, calling DCF and every family member, all that. We have 2 state police teams and the state police helicopter coming back to us to do 2 different types of searches. The fire chief was on standby to try and put together a team if we needed that. We had officers coming in addition to the CERT CAT teams, because we didn't know what we had. At 8:22, we get a phone call from a resident who said, hey, last night at about 7:50, I saw a van out in front of my house, and it looked like it picked up a kid. Some people got out of the van, got back in, and headed back towards Stetson. At which point we called Stetson, and they said, oh, yeah, there actually were 3 people that ran away last night. But we got one right away, and the other 2 took off into the woods. Well, they never told us that. And that would have been key information, because we could have spoken to that 3rd youth right away. First of all, if they called us right away, they walked right by the PD. We probably would have been right out there to meet them. Now we find out about a 3rd kid, and we have to go through an hour's worth of getting permissions from DCF just to talk to the young man. And he didn't have much to say when we finally did. Anyway, at the end of so then, Stetson said they were available that morning to help us with the search. And then at 12:16 hours, we have New Bedford Police Department telling us that the 2 youths walked into their lobby and said, hey, we're the missing people. We think you're looking for us. And they were fine. So that all concluded. But that's, we were looking for almost 16 hours, and they were missing for almost 17 hours. So we're right now working with Stetson to try to get all of the facts, because they should have called us right away, and they didn't. And they should have told us that they had 3, not 2. So those were big mistakes. And we were concerned about the number of assets they put out on the road, because we were putting out as much as we could. And thankfully, this doesn't have an unhappy ending with 2 frozen to death teenagers, which is what we were most concerned about. And then we were also, when we were on a Zoom meeting with the chairman, the town administrator, and Stetson, one of their employees told us that it was actually a forceful breakout. They used force to get out, and we're looking into that, but we've seen no proof of that. And they also told us they called the police. The police didn't answer their phone, and of course, that's verifiable through dispatch that did not happen. So we're trying to look into what all that is all about, because we're looking for the weak link here, because Stetson protocol does not allow this to happen. They call us immediately when they lose sight, and they lost sight. But when they got to the high school, they followed the kid, apparently the 3 kids, and they lost sight at the high school. So they didn't follow a lot of their protocols, and they're helping us to look into this to see what really went wrong. But with so far, the concept of them calling us and us not answering the phone, obviously not true. And the concept of the 3 students using force, we haven't gotten anything like that from people that we've interviewed. So this is where we're at right now. But it was a lot of resources, and we were very concerned, very concerned.
Okay. To fill in a little more of the gaps there, guys, I was in with this meeting we had. Senator Goby was, Representative Berthiaume were. I asked questions about, if the staff, it seems to me that the staff flat out is not being honest with their supervisors and with the administration of Stetson. The staff is claiming that they had eyes on these students. They followed them the whole time until they lost them back behind the high school, and then they promptly called the police. And I questioned, if you had eyes on the students, why are you letting these students leave and go right to people's houses and interact without masks if they're COVID positive? Why would you allow this to happen? Of course, they've got no answers for that. It's very clear they didn't have eyes on this, they claim to. And I think Stetson has a problem that they're bottom end supervising over at Stetson, and that's up to them to work out. The chief is trying to work on that side of it with them to see what's going on. As far as the state rep and the senator there, they asked questions to make sure that they had actually implemented the alarm systems in the doors and cameras that they had promised they would last time. And they indeed said they have, and Chief Carbone said, yes, they have put those systems in, so they have taken the steps they promised to take. So it seems like the higher level of Stetson seems to be setting up procedures and following through with what they said, but they've got to tighten up their supervision of their system, basically. That's what it seems like the failure is. These kids were also all kids put in there by DCF, who was looking for a place to dump their COVID students. and they basically informed Stetson they were sending them there because they had that building to utilize, and they didn't give Stetson a lot of choice. And by the time we had this meeting a week after the fact, I think it was the VP we were talking to. Is that correct, John? He'd already moved those kids out of there, so they were gone. Because these were kids coming in the program kids that they agreed to remove from Stetson, that we had all the elopements from in the past. That's the type of kids they put in there with COVID. So they have been removed, and we shouldn't have the issues again. But it certainly has called into question. It's one thing they've implemented all the things we asked before, but now they're going to have to find a way to ensure that those implementations are enforced, because clearly they were not. I'll open it up to you guys. Thoughts, questions, anything you'd like to ask about it. It was an hour-long meeting, so we got quite a bit of info out of it.
My history is, let me rephrase that. In the previous meetings I attended while I was chairman with Stetson, Senator Goby, Chief Carbone, Andrew at the time, I got the impression it was really easy to try to point at the line workers and say they screwed up. But I don't really feel that there was a lot of line worker screw up here. It's just not a very good top-down chain of command, or that's my impression. I mean, unless you had an employee sitting right in front of you that said, yeah, I screwed up. But even if you did, the history I've had there is, there seems to be holes in the story you presented from my understanding of the history. There's absolutely no reason why a worker would sit there and not call the police if they're told to call the police, unless they think their supervisor is going to be upset that they actually did what they were asked to do. Which means there's some type of either unwritten rule, or I don't want to use the word intimidation, but influence, to make their workers feel like it's the wrong thing to do to call the police. So from my mind, there's an institutional situation going on there that needs to be addressed, and it's not stopped since the beginning, since I've been involved. I think it sounds like they made some steps, at least on the physical building. But, and especially in regards to this situation, this is a management down type of education for their staff. If a person with COVID were to spit on my face today, I could have the police charge them with assault with a deadly weapon type situation. In other words, these students just didn't get out and you just had to watch them. These students were out and potentially known to be carrying a deadly weapon. If somebody had AIDS and spits on your face, do you consider that any less of an issue than if somebody with COVID had spit in your face? So that's my point. This is an upper level management issue. They should have known that the minute any student with COVID leaves their site, it's not on them anymore. They're not allowed to just walk and follow them. They're not allowed to walk in public in that situation, if I'm correct, under their current guidelines at Stetson. If it's not close to a house arrest situation that they're under when they've been placed there because of COVID and the situations, then we still have a big issue with Stetson and or the state and the programs that they institute to address the children that are placed there.
To fill in a few more blanks for you, the direct reporting we had from the officers and police reports on scene, directly conflicting with the reports that the supervisor was trying to present to us during the meeting with their boss, the vice president, with the state senator and representatives. And as far as their claim that they claimed that they immediately called the police, and they claimed that they had eyes on these kids. But clearly, if you had eyes on them, they would not have let them go to a house. And the type of student they were, they probably would not have been allowed to leave if they had eyes on them. So it seems like the failure was to observe them when they left. So maybe they broke out a window as their claim, but as John said, doesn't seem it. And our police, when they were notified by the public, did call Stetson and called the administrative number we've been given to call them to make contact, and they are the ones that did not answer their phone. It was not available. So what it seemed to be to me, after listening to an hour of this, and we can ask Jessica her impression, my impression was that the staff on duty was not doing what they were supposed to be doing. They were not monitoring the cameras they were supposed to monitor. They were not in the office they were supposed to be in to receive the phone calls. And it was sort of a, ooh, I wonder when they disappeared. And they even
So, Greg, if I can?
Sure.
We have gotten a couple of facts. They have told us that the kids ran by them down the hallway and that they chased them. You know, they got a head start on them because nobody was directly around them when they ran. And they ran right down the hallway and right out the door. And somebody followed them. So now we know that there was no window. They knew exactly the moment they left. And a staff member stayed in eyesight for a little bit, but then lost them. So, you know, there's no secret, there's no guesswork left as to how they got out and when they got out in terms of there was eyes on, and they followed them until they lost them. You know, they brought one kid back and the other two, that was it. They were gone. So yeah, they saw them leave.
Let me ask John, is our agreement that they will call us when a student leaves campus? Or when
So I
they lose
think-
eyesight?
So DCF requires that they call when they lose eyesight, but I don't consider this to be normal. First of all, they did lose eyesight. They didn't call, so they violated. But second, those were written for kids that didn't have COVID. So I don't think that even really applies. I think it becomes a public health emergency as soon as they leave, you know, and they're COVID. And, you know, given the fact that it's below 30 out, they're COVID positive and they're not dressed. I don't see waiting as viable.
So, as I sort of said before, it seems like they've set some procedures up and they're not having them follow the way they want. So I agree in one fashion with you, Matt, that this is a top-down administrative process that they need to tighten it up so there aren't any loopholes or ways that this doesn't happen. And they have to ensure that those phone calls get made. And really, we need that phone call much sooner. These students, I believe, were violent offenders.
Yes.
This group of 5 that was sent there. So I think we should have known that. I don't know. I think we did. I think we knew they were COVID. I don't know if we knew they were violent offenders. But that's certainly something we should have been told up front. And I think that we need to work again with Stetson to ensure that violent offenders should be, if they're there, locked down. They say they can't lock students down. It's not that type of facility. Then they shouldn't have that type of person there. But they didn't argue with us. They didn't try to make excuses. The VP immediately said, "This is trouble. We shouldn't have these kids there," and they were gone, and they're not there again. And my comments to the senator and the representative were that, you know, unfortunately, this is up to them to talk to DCF. So before DCF rams these students down our throats in this town by sending them there and costs us these resources, that these things need to be discussed and these plans need to be created in advance of the students arriving. Not sort of a, you know, oh no, let's figure something out after the fact. But that didn't work. There was no planning. There was no pre-planning. Talking with Stetson, they did nothing to spend any special funds to take these students in. I asked them how they spent the funds they received for it, and they said, well, just the typical room and board. So in other words, they had no special staffing, no special nursing for COVID patients, nothing special facility, no special security or anything done special to take these students in, which really should have been all requirements, and we should have had some input in that. And I'm hoping that the senator and representative will, you know, lean on DCF a little bit, make sure that in the future we have some say, well, who's coming into this town, and, you know, what sort of protocols and protections we have, because we were offered nothing of this, absolutely nothing. Made sure that, you know, it's not swept under the rug. The state is aware of this, and DCF is fully aware of this, and clearly we're all aware, our police are aware, state police were aware. We just can't let it die down, and I'm hoping to have a conversation, or Jessica could, with Representative Berthiaume and Senator Goby, and find out if they've taken any action on this and what they will do for us on this. it has to stop. They can't just keep rolling kids in it. Not let us know that they have dangerous students, and there's no way to secure them or lock them down.
If I could, so you know that this is the third elopement in a 2-week period when this happened. This was number 3. A couple nights earlier, the same 3 ran away, but not for very long. And a week earlier, a couple of other kids ran away, and our officers got them, came in contact with them down by the town line on 122. I feel like, to echo Greg's sentiment, it's not that we the police department, feel that the Stetson protocols were, lacking. It was the follow through of the protocols, the enforcement of the protocols that were lacking. And what concerns me about that is they recognized that these kids were a bad risk because they were runners and they were violent offenders. The history of running and violent offenses. So they recognized that and they moved to get them out. But we're going to have another situation where they're going to get something that they didn't bargain for. It's just the law of averages. And that's going to happen and we're going to deal with it. But we need to know that their protocols are going to be enforced. And we're going to get a call and we're going to get a head start on this, or we're going to get a chance at this. And it's not going to be an hour later and it's not going to be misinformation. And then at the end of the day, when we go to sort this whole thing out, more misinformation. So that's what we're trying to iron out now, because they can't guarantee that someone's not going to slip through the cracks and get there without them realizing what situation they have. So we just need them to, we're working with them to find out what went wrong, who's responsible, and how we're going to fix that so it doesn't happen in the future. In the meantime, we put a ton of assets out there to do this, to take care of this.
Chief Carbone, is there any way to, or any chatter about Seven Hills launching an investigation internally of their protocols, or maybe through a third party?
So we're working with them on that. And when we get our report, when it's finalized, I will share it with you. And then we'll sit down, because I feel like it's, I'll tell you what we found. And then if the next step you want us to sit down with the vice president again, or you're calling it, some sort of an outside party, I guess I'll lay the facts at your door and then help you to go forward with just that sort of approach if that's what you want.
I'm confident, John, that you understand what we're looking for from this. It's a more notification, and if they have that type of student, they need to have a building they can lock the doors and secure. And that's something that you are going to have the opportunity when you're talking with the vice president in Stetson, that they make that necessary change before they have any type of student like this again.
Right.
I don't think you don't need to talk to us to understand that that's what we'd like to push for. And the one shining light in this is that their school nurse did contact our town nurse, and we were notified that they brought 5 COVID cases in. That notification did happen. It happened in a timely manner. So that there are positive parts of this, but overall, they brought exactly in the kind of student that we didn't want to see there. And it does sound more like the state said, we're sending you these kids, you're going to have to take them because we got nothing else we can do with them. So there needs to be a conversation with DCF through the House of Representatives and through the state Senate to make sure that DCF isn't doing this, because as I explained to them, DCF's charge is to take care of these children, and they failed. They failed miserably. These kids were, out with a real risk of exposure at 18 degrees or 20 degrees overnight for almost 20 hours. The risk that these children could have died from exposure is very real. And DCF let these kids down. DCF put them into some place that wasn't prepared or capable of taking care of them. And unfortunately, the impression I got from the vice president of Seven Hills, and also kind of, to me was Representative Berthiaume seemed to have the same opinion that, DCF is just struggling. They just got to get the kids and shove them out somewhere. But they need to be held better accountable. And that's really what we need the representative and senator to make sure that DCF is also doing their diligence to make sure, that the kids are taken care of when they go someplace. You guys have any other questions on it or thoughts, or, I mean, kind of playing a waiting game now. The kids are gone. It's been corrected. They're gone. And the chief is going to be working with the school, as he said, and we'll find out what results we have, if any, in the future. But if you have any other questions about what transpired, I mean, we're trying to fill you in as completely as we can. But I think, Jessica, if we missed anything you think, then you were listening into the whole conversation. That pretty much cover what happened. Do you think there's any highlights we've missed?
No, I think that both you, Chief and Chief Carbone and Greg covered it really well. Thank you.
So I want to make sure you guys are fully caught up on this before we move on to anything else. And if you have any other thoughts, Matt, you look very perturbed. So
I just feel like, I mean, maybe Chief's got a different opinion, but it feels like the same conversation we had when we sat down with Andrew the last time, and it's Stetson has an extremely poor record of communicating with the local town, the police, and maybe they've improved some of their communication with the police department, but did they notify us that after they told us they aren't going to take these high-risk violent offenders that they were going to start taking? Were we actually notified violent offenders were brought back into the program, or just children or youths with COVID were brought in? And if that's the case, then in my opinion, the vice president still doesn't get the picture and doesn't understand the situation on how important it is for him to properly communicate with the town. And it's the vice president. It's not his lackey front end people. They've had a failure from the beginning when it comes to communication, and they've done very little in my mind to fix it.
Well, to answer your question, Matt, we were not notified that they were dangerous or that they were flight risks.
Thank you.
My impression was that Stetson was told they would get these COVID students, and I don't think they received or necessarily even looked for clarification as to what type of students they were getting. They were just COVID positive.
They have to be notified by the state. These children are classified in certain categories, and my understanding is even by the state, certain categories can't even go to Stetson because Stetson's not given the certification by the state to accept certain levels. So the state wouldn't have sent them something that didn't fit their classification.
Right, but it's
They
just
have to kind of provide some documentation saying this is how these youths were classified and this is what we're giving you.
right. What the state did is sort of said, we're gonna take our COVID overflow and send it to you. And they didn't tell them in advance what type of students that was going to include. I don't think, but they may have. They may very well have told them it'll be a whole, array of students. But as we know, they are licensed for this type of student. They've had them before, but these are the ones they agreed to give up because they really can't care for them properly at this facility. And once again, that's why they're gone. And this is, we did spend an hour of in-depth conversation about all these things. And it comes right down to we've got to trust that the chief is going to be working with them very closely on getting these protocols, and he's going to come away satisfied that he's getting the notification he needs. Because you and I, we won't know. This happens. We hear it from Jessica when she gets a report from the chief after something's already transpired. So it's really up to the chief to work with Stetson, and if he can't get satisfaction from it, then he needs to come back to us. We need to go back with the state representative and the senator. As we found out before, hitting this head on as a board and trying to meet with Stetson, they wouldn't do that with us. And I think they still probably would refuse. But I think the procedures they haven't stated seem to be good procedures, but they're not enforcing them. So that's the next step. It's one thing to say, here's our new rules. It's like the select board saying, you can't use any of our town rooms except for the meeting room. And then boards go do it anyways. We need to find a way to enforce our own rules. We're having the same difficulty, just to give you perspective on our end. So Stetson's going to have to work out I still see it as a positive step. They have the cameras, they have the alarms in the door, and they put some protocols in place. And it's a step. It's not an instant fix. And if we thought we were having a fix at one shot at this, we were being very naive. Most of the time, something like this is going to take several versions and revisions until we get it right. And we have to be patient. I think overall, as Stetson, other than these elopements, we've been better off this last year than we were the year before. And I am anticipating we'll improve next year as well. We start to work out, how they're going to enforce their own policies. And hopefully the chief will be strongly involved with that. And if he's not satisfied, come back to us and we can get the state back involved to try to get the policies enforced the way we see fit.
I got nothing more to add. I appreciate the effort the chief's putting in. You put in, Greg, Jessica. I just wanted to give you from my perspective that this update doesn't make me feel like a lot of progress was made. We just kind of got lucky with a little bit of a lull, a variety of issues where we didn't get anything major. But in my mind, I look at this just like the last time the children left and ran into that guy's garage and grabbed I guess we'll call it a yard tool. But in other words, it's a repeat. So this is a step back. This isn't, and they didn't go very far forward in my mind to have this type of step back and not consider it. Maybe they approached you differently than the last time, because last time was a pretty big defensive wall. They didn't want to hear from us. They just leave us alone. We're doing okay. But maybe this time they're a little more open with you.
They were very open, Matt.
Huh?
They were very open, and they were owning it. They really were. The top level was owning it. The people on scene were denying. Oh no, we did everything right. We did all these things, but we know our police didn't call. We have dispatch logs. We did not get called. Our officers called them. They did not answer the phone. So we know there's a failure on the lower, and we still don't know why. Like you said, are they scared there's some repercussion to them? Are they really, the supervisors telling them what we don't know? That's what we still have to work out. But they made no attempt to make excuses for it or to cover it. They agreed it's wrong. They agreed the students shouldn't be there. We can't handle those students here, and they got them out of it. But even that took the vice president some time, because once DCF ships them, you've got them for a time until you get the paperwork done to get them back out. It was done by the time we had the meeting on Friday. The students, I believe, going to be gone by the end of that day. So, it's tough because we can't meet as a board on this. I'm not privy to exactly how the discussions went when you were there, but my impression, I assume John was there both times. So John could give us a better idea if they were less combative or what this time.
They were much less far more cooperative, and I think you hit the nail on the head. At the upper level, they were talking to us about the problem and owning it. At the lower level, there was a big problem. We have to figure out why that was, and who is responsible for that misinformation and lack of following the protocols.
And the information we were getting from the supervisor was in direct contrast to the information we got from the officers on scene. But she is getting her information secondhand from the staff that was on duty that night, who was not in attendance at this meeting. Their supervisor was there to represent them. The staff was not there. So she was stating things as fact as she was told them, and we had to point out to her that that's not how things transpired. And I don't think the vice president questioned that, things transpired as our police have told them they transpired. I think they understand that they have an issue with the staffing. Why they do, I don't know yet. I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to speculate. That's hopefully something that John's going to discover when the chief's going through this. Hopefully he's going to get the answers and find out what he needs to discover. All right. Do we have any public input? Anybody wanting to comment on this? We would take any questions from people at this point. I know people may be here for this. People were certainly bothered by it. We saw plenty on Facebook about it, so we'll give people a chance to comment with my normal rules. Have anyone, Jessica, looking to raise their hand? No?
Is this just on this topic, Greg, or are you doing your public comment period now?
Nope, just on this topic.
Are you doing a public comment period?
I asked for public comment earlier.
No,
I just don't-
you limited it
I-
to the cable.
I was, well, there's, we'll get to public comment again in the end then in that case. But yeah, I did allude, I was looking for then more specifically towards the cable. But we will move on from this. Thank you, Chief, for being here. And please keep us updated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Okay, next up, we have our 2021 alcohol license renewals. You guys have looked through these or not? I don't know.
They were sent to everybody today.
Okay.
I have not gone through the whole list yet.
17 total, it says.
So we
Um,
did a couple since last year.
I'll go through them, the ones we have, just to call them out by name. And then we can refer to these as the 2021 renewals for any motion. We have one license name Red Berry LLC. It's at the Harding Allen Estate for a hotel innkeeper license in all alcohol beverages. We have one for Jizong Garden Incorporated for Yummy Gardens Restaurant. It's a restaurant type for all beverages. We have one for Wholesome Market Incorporated for supermarket for wine and malt. We have one for Marketplace on the Common as a package store for wines and malt. We have another one for the Jenkins House Bed and Breakfast as a housekeeper inn. Now, Jessica, it says here license category all beverages, but in their additional comments, it says we're not renewing our alcohol license, but we're enclosing the restaurant. They're closing the restaurant, but they want to remain as a bed and breakfast.
Sorry, I just tried to unmute myself and my computer went crazy. But yes, yeah. So they are choosing not to renew their license, and that's just their notification.
Okay, so do we need to renew their hotel innkeeper license now, or can this be taken out of it?
That will be a separate one. So yeah, this one's more of a notification for ABCC more so than a renewal.
So I'll keep that out of this batch in general. We'll keep going. Corbin Plaza Liquors is a package store, all alcohol beverages. Barre Sportsman Club, license type is club for all alcohol beverages. We have the Barre General Store on Vernon Ave in South Barre to be a package store with wines and malt. We have Brusso Liquor Mart Incorporated. Brusso's Liquor Mart is up on Exchange Street, uptown, as a package store for all alcohol beverages. We have High Tides, which is Title Seafood LLC, for a restaurant and all alcohol beverages. We have the Upper Deck Sports Bar and Grill, licensed in the same name as the DBA, as a restaurant with all alcohol beverages. We have Red Tomato Pizza, which is a Tisha Corporation, for a restaurant with wines and malt. We have Carissa A. Hartman Wozniak for the Hartman Herb Farm as a restaurant for wines and malt. We have the Carter and Stevens Farm LLC doing business as Carter Stevens Farm for a package store to sell wines and malt. We have another one from Stone Cow Brewery for farm winery pouring permit, malt only. We have Dominicus Incorporated for the Barre Mill Restaurant for a restaurant license for all alcohol beverages. And lastly, we have Barre Post 2 Building Association on South Barre Road for a club license for all alcohol beverages. So I would entertain a motion on those renewal applications as listed.
Before that question, the one at the top of the pile, the Harding Allen Estate, there's no signature or dates on there. Is there a hard copy with those, Jessica, at the office?
Yeah, so thank you for recognizing that because I was going to make a comment on. So Harding Allen, they have paid. The only thing that they didn't do was sign this paper. So we're trying to get them to sign it before we actually send it out. But they have paid for it. They just forgot to sign the actual paperwork.
So then, do we need to hold that until we do have those signatures?
We could have a caveat that we approve it pending their signature on the form.
Right, we won't send it out until we have their signature, but they are all set to have their license renewed. Everything's up to date for them, and they have paid for it. We just, they just forgot to send in that form when they sent in their money.
Make a motion to approve all of the alcohol license applications for renewal, pending final execution of appropriate forms as necessary, for the this calendar year 2021, correct?
Yes, and as read by me.
I will second the motion.
So this motion is second to approve the 2021 liquor licenses as I read here online. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, aye.
Bill Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Now we'll take up the notification here from Jenkins Inn. Do we still need to approve them for the hotel innkeeper? Or is that
That's a separate, that's a separate
time?
license that they have, yeah.
Okay, so this is just, do we need to accept this?
No, I think it just made it into the pile with all of the other renewal forms, but there's been a couple of restaurants that have chosen not to renew, and typically if they don't renew, they, they just won't send anything in, but they did us a courtesy by sending us a notification that they're not renewing their license.
Okay. But for those in town that still enjoy that bed and breakfast that's still there, they're just not going to be running the restaurant anymore. Yeah, and what do we have next on our wonderful list? Small community grant letter of support. Jessica, do you want to fill us in on that one while I'm looking for it?
Yep. So, back in, I want to say March or April, Heather, the former interim town administrator, and CMRPC worked together on this same exact small communities grant to update the town's open space and recreation plan, which hasn't been done since, I believe, 2009 or 2010. And this grant isn't very competitive. It's basically if you apply for it and you show a need, you're going to get it. Just when this was applied for in the latter part of the last fiscal year, it had been too late and there wouldn't have been enough time to execute the grant, and it was just too late in the funding cycle, so the town wasn't and I don't know if it was ever submitted or if it just wasn't approved, but regardless, the town didn't get the funds last year. So when I saw this come out, I wanted to get ahead of the game and apply for it as soon as possible. So this is the exact same application that came across your desks earlier this year.
When I was reading that, it seemed to indicate that had to be applied for by last Friday. No?
No. let me.
I thought there was a deadline of the 18th.
I think that might have been the first day to apply for it, but I don't think it was the last day. They only sent this to me last Friday, so. Yeah, no, we're at the very beginning of this grant round, so there shouldn't be a deadline of last Friday.
I must have misread something then. I was trying to skim through everything fast as I usually do here. Anybody want to make a motion on it? Obviously, I think it's a good idea. Looks like there's quite a bit of funds could be available to us for this, and I think we said more of a first come, first serve. So we want to get on this quickly.
I make a motion that we proceed with the grant application as presented and authorize Greg to sign the letter of support as presented in the agenda packet.
I will second that motion, please.
All right, I have a motion, a second, to allow me to sign the letter of support to continue with this grant application. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Glenn Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind just signing that and dropping it off at the town hall so I can get it scanned in and sent to CMRPC.
Sure.
Thank you.
Personnel committees, is that what we're up to next? Reclassify. Okay, what are you recommending, Jessica, before I get into reading all these right now for the treasurer collector assistant position? Are we looking to do an assistant treasurer collector, or are we looks that way, right?
Yes, so my recommendation here is to reclassify the assistant collector's position to an assistant treasurer collector, and then reclassify the assistant treasurer's position to a payroll and collections coordinator. This will better reflect the jobs that are being done currently in the treasurer collector's office, and it's very timely as we do have an opening. Our assistant collector has taken a job in a different town. So I think would be really helpful for the town to get some more competitive applications. I think that there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of other towns that have assistant treasurer collector positions now. So I think that there's going to be more of an interest for applicants to apply for something that is multifaceted. And then also, when we think about our department head is cross-trained in treasurer, being a treasurer and a collector, that's what we want to see in the future as well. So I think it's really important to have somebody who has those capabilities and understandings of both responsibilities.
And just to follow it, guys, I did go in and have a chat with Alex about this. I spent about an hour in there talking with him last week to see if he'd read the divisions and what he thought. He did recommend that his opinion would be they should have a assistant treasurer collector as one job and a payroll for another, which also, as we've said, sort of does split the roles as they are right now. So I like the idea of it, and our actual treasurer collector likes the idea of it, and it does, as our interim had commented and suggested, it does better reflect the roles as they are being utilized in the office now. More importantly, reclassifying that pay scale should make a pay differential for that position, because there are a lot more duties on that position. That's the way I believe it has been in the office for a while. It's not going to help us retain the employee that we've just lost, but we do need to make sure that we can get a qualified, dedicated person in there. My thought also, and I'll bounce it off of you guys, is we still have a lot of room we haven't utilized downstairs behind the police station portion, and it might be wise to set the assistant treasurer up in a separate office from the payroll and maybe separate those offices. I don't know, if it's going to make things easier, less confusing in the office. and just separate the workspaces. It was just a thought, but we still have a lot of room they were not utilizing. And it could be the option to give an assistant like this an actual office with the window access in an office. We still have, in the backside of the police side, we still have an actual window where they do processing guests in the past. It would still be more room, and then we could still, if we wanted to, move a clerk up there, which is something else I wanted to see. There's a lot of room. There's a couple of old lockup cells that I think could easily be converted to a vault or a safe to put some secure records in. And the main door going back to that area, I think we could fit a window in pretty easily. And the clerk upstairs, so that most of our business to the public is all on one floor. You know, it still keeps the building upstairs, but you know, we have the plumbing and electrical and building inspector. They have a large room area set up there. They I think not fit as well downstairs if we move that down. And I think that people are visiting the treasurer, collector, and clerk more often than other departments. So I would like us to make an effort to get the sort of public contact people all on the same floor. That's something we need to start thinking about. That room sat empty now for a couple of years, and we really need to make better use of the space we do have, I think. You guys will listen to your discussion, comments on the descriptions now.
Can you clarify, well, the previous, I guess we're calling payroll clerk, was that originally CL3 in the classification plan, or has that been reduced from the original?
So the assistant treasurer and the assistant collector, the separate positions, are both classified as CL3s right now.
And what's the increase to CL6?
The beginning wage of a CL6 is $20.40 an hour, and the beginning wage of a CL3 is $16.50 an hour.
Is that about $8,000 a year difference?
Mm-hmm.
Is that in our budget?
So the separation, okay, so what's been proposed here is that the payroll clerk and coordinators' hours are reduced to 21 hours a week. So the difference in what we would save in those hours would make up for what it would cost extra to have somebody in a higher category.
So we're not actually just changing the job description, we're actually changing the job to the payroll clerk?
Yes.
It wasn't how it was presented originally.
Well, it's all detailed in the job descriptions.
Well, the reduction in hours per week was not presented.
Okay.
Concern for reducing hours too much right now. What are we at when we pay? We pay benefits, I believe, right now, correct? And what hourly rate, what hours does she need to maintain her benefits? Because I don't want to start stripping benefits from anybody, I'm sure.
Right. It's 20 hours a week.
Okay. And the hours reduced, you're talking about sufficient to do the task there.
Can you repeat that?
Will the 21 hours be sufficient? How many hours is she working currently?
The current job is 30 hours a week.
So it's a 9-hour reduction. Is that going to affect the ability to get that job done?
After discussing with the Alex and the previous treasurer collector and the interim treasurer collector, they do not believe that that reduction would impact the ability to get the work done.
I like the splits. I just don't like reducing someone's hours right now. And I think it's a move we have to eventually make. I think it's a smart move to have an assistant treasurer collector in one. I recall back when Sharon was here, she was trying to cross train both and both sides of it, and it just wasn't going smoothly. It wasn't going well. It makes more sense to have an assistant treasurer collector that can do the job, one person. And I see no reason for a treasurer collector to be doing payroll. It seems like a logical split and a logical way to do it. As you said, it's an $8,000 difference in a year. For the time that we're going to have a person in the office, it's going to be a $4,000 difference for half of the year. So it would have to be something we look at the budget next year to fit it in, or to reduce the hours at the end of next year. But I really am against reducing someone's hours in the middle of the fiscal year, as they have been approved by the town at that position and that hour for this year. Certainly, this change on that second position, on the payroll position, could be something we plan to implement on July 1st, and perhaps implement the treasurer collector assistant position now. I would assume we're going to wind up having the position empty for a couple of weeks or possibly a month. And that will, of course, will reduce a portion of money as well. So overall, the pool of money may come out pretty close to even. Right now, if they're making $16.32,000, it's $2,800 a month. So if we have their office empty for a month, that picks up $2,800 of the $4,000 we pay. To have their office filled for 6 months, but it's actually only 5 months. So it comes very close to matching up on the pay. You have to do the math and look, but I would think it's going to come very close. If we do 5 months at a 40,000 pay rate, it's sort of what, $800 a week, as opposed to 16, say, right? No. I'm doing some bad math here, guys. $20 an hour, 40 hours would be 800. But it's not a 40-hour position, is it?
32.
32.
So 32 at 20 is 640 a week. And if we have 5 months left, we just give 20 weeks at 640. So it's about 12, almost 13,000 pay out if we did it for 5 months. Whereas the other position, 16 an hour at the same 32. Someone has to help me there. I can do it in my head, but let's see, 3,200, 320, 480, almost 500, I believe. We did that for 26 weeks, be 13,000. So they do come out almost in a wash if we have the position empty for a month. So if we did do this and we have the start date, then it's going to put an extra burden on Alex for a month. But if we did this and have the start date, so it's a month down the road, we'll be able to stay within the budget on it this year. And plan our change to the other position at the end of the fiscal year.
I just want to, so we should probably just verify that reducing an employee's salary by nearly 30% is something you can do after they've already been hired and given a job. That's a huge cut. It's not like you're just cutting 8 hours out of a 40-hour week. And also just, I guess in a way we, kind of like you said, Greg, we don't have to act on both of these today. We can act on the assistant treasurer collector and leave the assistant collector position sitting until we verify all the steps we can take on that, and also recognize the impact we put on an employee that's been working for the town for 20 plus years. Cutting their salary by 30% at a minimum, it's not something you just throw right at them.
It's undesirable. That's why I think if we look at just the position, the assistant treasurer collector position, as I said, we can, by delaying the position for 1 month, the difference, the remainder of the year should work out about the same for us. So we should run into a deficit issue there. But yeah, the other position, I certainly don't want to go reduce someone's salary now. I want to look at other angles. There may be other tasks you could pick back up somewhere else as well. I don't know. She's been doing the payroll for a long time. And I don't know when it became a full-time position, because payroll I don't think really was. I think it was an attempt to, put more assistants, I would guess. I don't know. I don't know when she was brought into for the collector position there. Is she in the collector or treasurer position? Assistant?
You're talking about the assistant treasurer's position, and the last time that position was updated, it was, or I'm assuming when it was created, it was only created in that job description as it currently stands as approved is only for 7 hours a week. So there was definitely somewhere along the line where hours were added on, but then, the job description never was updated.
So I don't know how it became a 30-hour-a-week job then if it was only a 7 description. You'd have to research that too and talk to Labor Council.
Now, we're verifying that those 30 hours are specifically to this employee only for this job, because I also know that this employee works as the fire department's admin.
Yeah, so there's two separate.
So the 30 hours historically right now have been specifically for the treasurer department.
Correct. And then the 5 hours is a separate thing for the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I guess we'd be looking for a motion, gentlemen, to entertain the new CL6 position as assistant treasurer collector, and allow us to get advertising for that so that we can try to find qualified personnel, and we'll try to target our start date for 30 days after the position is empty, to allow us to compensate, to make the payroll work.
Just one more question on the CL6. What's the top of that scale?
Bring it up real quick. So currently the top of the scale, are you talking about this top of the step? So if they were here for over 21 years?
Yeah, however the current is beginning date.
It's $26.74 an hour.
And out of curiosity, where is the current salary at? I mean, I know we said it starts at 60, the CL3. Where is that employee at now?
The current assistant collector who is leaving us right now is making $18.12 an hour.
So we really only have a $4,000 jump or a $2,000 difference there this year, the remainder of this year. So it's really even less of an impact that we're talking about, because the person that's actually leaving is only, they're going to leave us $2,000 short if we fill it for the whole.
And that's if the employee comes in without a degree. If they come in with a degree at a CL6, it's not a huge difference, but if they come in with a bachelor's, it's $20.71 an hour. And then if they come in with a master's, it's $21.01 an hour. So again, not a huge difference, but still difference.
We've had this happen before where we hire someone and for various reasons, we start them at step 2 or 3. Is there any consideration in doing something like that at this time? Because that's also another thing that we're not factoring in, assuming the budget becomes an issue.
Right. At this time, it's not something that I'm considering.
Okay. All right. I have no more comments on that. I'm sorry. Thank you for answering the questions.
That's why we're talking about it, guys. I had an extensive talk with Alex, and he wanted us to try to move that way, but we have to figure out how to do it. kind of scary. I don't know about you guys. I was kind of nerve wracking for me to have that position go empty, especially right at the end of the fiscal year as we did. It was very unnerving. And I would think I would feel better having an assistant treasurer collector in place if that should happen again, rather than be left the way we were. We're very fortunate that Sharon hung on and made sure the transmission and we brought the interim in as we did. But learning from what's happened in the past, I'd feel more comfortable with an assistant treasurer collector ready to fill those shoes if our treasurer should leave us again. Dylan, do you have anything to add before we take action?
Would this be reclassifying the assistant collector position and reclassifying that as assistant treasurer collector? Is that right?
Correct.
Well, I have no further comment. I'd like to make a motion that we reclassify the assistant collector position as assistant treasurer collector, as written in the position description in tonight's agenda packet, and publicly post when ready, without delay.
Second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to reclassify this position as listed and to advertise. I would put the caveat, since we're not going to be pressing this for time, that I would still say we'll go ahead and advertise now. But as always, I would suggest we entertain qualified in-house applicants first, as we usually do. It's been a town policy for years. It's not a written policy that must be followed. But as we recently did by making an employee full-time that's picked up so many part-time jobs in the town, we do want to promote from within if we can. It doesn't mean there's anybody qualified for the position that will take it or will come for it. So if you gentlemen are okay with that little caveat, be added to the motion that we do consider in-house first. Any other discussion on that?
Sounds reasonable to me.
Amen.
I second the motion to amend the previous motion.
We have a motion and a second for adopting this position change as outlined, advertising, and of course giving consideration to in-house first. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. As far as the other position, I think prudence, we need to talk with Labor Council first and see what the legality of this and the issues of this and the timing. And we're going to need to have a conversation, or maybe Jessica, you'll need to have a conversation with the employee this will affect. And you never know. Someone might say, you know what, great, I'm looking to cut back my hours as long as I don't lose my benefits. And we're not talking about hurting benefits. So maybe they won't mind an hourly cut. Maybe they look forward to it. Maybe they try to look for another position to pick some other hours up and down. I don't know, but I think we're having this discussion, and we want to have this discussion and make a motion towards this if we can by the end of the year. So I would suggest as soon as you reasonably can. I would like to see you have a discussion face to face, not via Zoom or on the phone, when that is possible. If that makes sense. Gentlemen, anything else to add to that?
Just, I'm not sure, but if I recall, we did approve the clerk buying some of the scanning or imaging equipment to help turn public records into electronic files.
Correct.
This might be a role where this individual might be able to help at least get some things scanned, and then it can move forward into proper filing. Something like, I don't know. It's just a thought, Jessica.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the suggestion.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And once again, we'll make sure she does, you may find sometimes you have employees and they don't want to say no. They take on more work as you offer to them because they don't want to turn it down. I don't know. You never know. She may welcome a reduction in hours if she's not going to lose her benefits. She may very well not. But we don't know till we ask her and find out how she feels about it and see what else we could do. If it means we're finding something else or another position or some hours to be filled, we can certainly consider that when we're making the budget, which is going to start soon, I assume. Next year's budget, consider how we might fund those extra hours if need be. Because as we found out, we're really only talking about a $4,000 difference in that other position. But if we don't need that many hours for just payroll, and we're not, burdening her now with trying to learn, the collections and treasury side of it, perhaps there's something else we can find that she wants to do if she wants to. I think we've beaten that horse pretty well at this point. I'm trying to find my hit sheet. I'm misplacing my things here. There we go. Trying to stay on schedule here. COVID-19 update is next, Jessica.
Yes, thank you. So, as you all know, and many people in the public know, that Barre was designated a red community last week. And so what that means now, really, I think it has a different meaning than it did a couple months ago, because a couple months ago, if your community was designated a red community, a very high risk community, you had to roll back you had to roll back some of the restrictions or put some more restrictions back in place. And since December 13th, the governor's order has rolled back all of the communities, regardless of their level of risk, back to phase 3, step 1. So at this point, being a red community just means that there's a high number of cases in town for the population. So currently, I believe we have about 30 active cases. It fluctuates just because of the way that the cases come in and are reported. And, every day there might be a new case, but then that means that every day there's another case that's dropping off. So right now, I would say we are at roughly 30 active cases, which is incredibly high for Barre. When I got here back in July, there had been 0 cases since May, and then there were 0 cases up until late October, early November. So it shows that we're seeing that the virus is spreading, and our public health nurse is reporting that it seems to be less virulent than it used to be. And what that means is that it seems like we are seeing a huge amount of cases, but we're not seeing as many of those cases being, severely ill. So there's that piece of information that's kind of interesting to compare back to, the first wave of the pandemic, where it seemed like, if you got sick, it was just very, you had a lot of really bad symptoms, whereas now a lot of people who are testing positive don't have any symptoms, which is very problematic, because then those people who don't have symptoms continue on with their daily lives and are potentially spreading it to other people. So, we're heading into the end of the year. We have 2 big holiday weekends right in a row. So I think that, after the new year, we're going to see, I don't know what we're going to see, but I can only assume that it's going to be a lot more cases. I know that the wait times for getting a COVID test right now are several hours long. And so it's showing that, people are going out to get COVID tests, but there's really just, we say that there's a lot more testing than there were at the beginning of the pandemic, which is true. But the fact that it still takes someone, up to 5 hours out of their day to get a COVID test shows that I don't think that there is really enough COVID testing that's accessible to the public. So there's that side of the pandemic, and then there's also the other side of this whole issue is the CARES Act funds, which I just found out yesterday evening that Congress passed another economic stimulus package, it did not give any extra aid to municipalities or states, but it does allow us to spend our existing CARES Act funds past the December 30th deadline. We have those funds until December 31st, 2021 now. So that really covers us for another year. And I think for me, that was the biggest weight to take off my shoulders, is that, we have this deadline, and it was a pretty daunting deadline, especially when these costs are not going to stop on December 30th. So with that being said, we still have that extra $10,000 that I wanted as a buffer. So unless Congress passes another aid package for local governments, we'll have another $10,000 that we will have to stretch out over 12 months. So I will be much more conservative with how those funds get spent.
Would have been nice if they let us know that ahead of time, because of course we were very gracious of the school in spending a lot of the funds towards notebooks and Chromebooks for the kids and laptops for some of the teachers. That being said, those are things we needed to get anyway, so it's money I think that was hopefully well spent. Anyways, and as far as the tent purchase goes, that's going to be our next topic up, and it rolls right into it. How did you make out talking to the other companies? Could anyone else match us on post size or seam overlaps? What did you find out?
Yeah, so I found out that the eCanopy, which is the company that Greg had gone out and looked at, he got a quote for the 2-inch poles, whereas the original quote that I solicited was only for the 1 3/4 inch poles. And then there was the American Tent, their quote was about $29,000, and then the third quote that I got that came in the lowest was $22,000 roughly. And so when I checked in with them to see if they had if they had a quote for tents with their poles with a 2-inch diameter, they said that actually was the quote for the 2-inch diameter poles. So those three companies, and I think the reason why that company, Salinas Tent, was so exceptionally low is because a lot of the other companies that we were looking at, they sell Salinas tents, but since I went directly to the manufacturer, they're probably able to cut a much better deal since it's right directly from them.
Yes, I do know that eCanopy did sell Salinas as one of the brands that they sold, so obviously they just be a reseller of that tent. It makes sense that they just mark it up. Their canopy weight seemed to be the same weight, a 16 ounce, or?
Yeah, everything was comparable, and I think I think the most important thing was that pole size, to make sure that the structure is sound.
Right. And it has a ratchet tie-down system as well?
Yes, it comes with all of the bells and whistles.
Excellent. We had, how much total have we allowed for tents with the CARES Act that was approved?
27,000.
And that included the heater and everything was all towards tents, was 27?
With the heater, it was about 29.
29, because we don't need to buy a heater. I think that's going to get us into too much difficulty between, obviously we could do it between the fire department and the building commissioner. We could do a heater, but it becomes cumbersome to store the heater, a project to set up with the heater. So it would be much wiser to stay away from the heater. We are New Englanders. We all, I think, go in winter jackets and hats. So if need be in cold weather, we can still get out there as long as we're protecting ourselves from the elements and do so without a heater. So I would suggest maybe look at purchase of an additional tent or something, whatever you could to to round out that money, or are we better off to stick it at the number of tents we discussed and leave some extra money in the kitty?
I think that we're, obviously the board can discuss this and decide, but I think it would be most advantageous for us to save that extra money for other purchases.
I do as well, gentlemen.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'll say the Salinas company has excellent reviews. So I feel like with the lower cost with going through them for a comparable product, good reviews, I think that's how we should spend our funds and save some of that extra for the kitty as we just discussed.
Can you verify the number of tents that the Salinas quote includes and the size of the tents for the general public?
Yes, let me pull that up real quick because at the top of my head, I'm not too sure. Says 720 by 30 tents.
Okay, so
20 by 30.
20 by 30. Is that? That's what we. That's
I
what
couldn't
we.
tell if you said 25 or 20 by.
20 by. Sorry.
All right, thank you. And those are all frame type tents. They're not pole tents.
Correct.
An important difference to make. And
7. All right, I misremembered it as 2 for some reason and was thinking the 7 was like the number of sides we were buying or something.
2 with side kits. So there should be, depending how companies go, some have, short sides and long sides. Some have a continuous side that you leave the opening where you want. I don't know what this one was offhand. But we did include 2 sets of sides, correct?
I think we included 3 sets of sides.
3 sets, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would suggest then that we also authorize Jessica to spend some of those funds to pick up battery-operated lighted exit signs. We would need, I believe, 2 per tent. To have 2 exits per tent would be 6. And fire extinguishers up to 6. But she can verify with the building commissioner how many lighted signs she needs per tent that's enclosed. And with the fire chief, how many fire extinguishers she'll need per tent that's enclosed. When the tents are run as a canopy only, we don't need those things. But if we do, for example, use one at a town meeting and put the sides on to keep protection around the clerk and their equipment for sign-in, that will have to have a designated enter-exit with a lighted exit sign. Even in the daytime, it has to be lighted, so we need a battery-op sign. Because if we bring power to the tent, that's a whole other issue. And we would need to hang fire extinguishers, I believe, by either exit. But we can verify that with the fire chief, what size extinguisher we need. I would assume the extinguishers are going to run something around 100 or 2 a piece. And the lighted signs, we put something in the ballpark of $40 or $50 a piece. So it'll probably be another $1,000 total towards purchase. But we make sure we get these things ahead of time, so if we want to set them up, we'll be ready to. So looking for a motion to go with this quote. We talked about the Salinas and authorize Jessica to verify through the building inspector what we need for exit signs at the fire department and make sure we purchase the signs and extinguishers to become compliant with having these tents inspected on the sites.
I second the motion.
A motion and a second to go ahead with the Selena purchase and authorize the town administrator to purchase the necessary extinguishers and signs after meeting with the fire chief and building inspector. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Dylan Clark, yes.
Matt Urban, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. I think, I know Matt saw, I think Dylan did, there was quite a bit of conversation online. Some people had some concern about the tent purchases. And I'd like to take this opportunity to let the public know in general. The CARES Act is money that was released by the federal government to local cities and towns. Federal, correct, not state. And with that money, it was intended for the municipalities to use on issues that were brought about because of COVID. Obvious purchases were extra PPE, a lot of masks, and for the fire department, some suits and some face shields and things that the ambulance deals with all the time, and as well as the police needs masks. Everybody needed cleaning supplies, paying for cleanings of buildings and deep cleanings and disinfecting. We've had expenses with the nurse in town for all the COVID cases coming in, the Board of Health, and there are many, many impacts that hit the town, finances that the CARES Act allowed us to fund those things out of the federal money. It was a large sum of money overall, I think in excess of $400,000. So we, of course, immediately thought, great, we'll buy an ambulance out of that money. We were very quickly informed that we could not spend that CARES Act money to purchase vehicles. So people have had concern over buying these tents. They're worried that we're increasing their local taxes or property taxes. I assure you we are not. This money was federally funded. Other people are frustrated that we're buying tents instead of a vehicle specifically for the fire chief to have a new chief car. But at our special town meeting, the request was from an admin vehicle, not the chief car. We have since figured out that the chief really does need a chief car. He was going to dump his down as an admin vehicle. But fundamentally, the money was not there at town meeting, at special town meeting. The funds we believe we had available were not usable for that purpose because it was just recovered from a 2017 vote in the senior center roof that was funded through a grant later. So that money had to go back into coffers and could not be used for a chief car. But once again, the CARES Act money was not available for that by rule. The tent purchase is exactly the kind of thing the CARES Act money is intended for. If we have to have our meeting outdoors, many people also suggested we should have it in, the high school auditorium or in the high school, in the gym, in the senior center, and all sorts of other places. But as we approach this special town meeting, people that might have followed some of the chats on Facebook, most people were very concerned with the rising COVID numbers and the restriction by the states becoming more restrictive once again. They did not want to go indoors to meet for this town meeting. So moving it outdoors very quickly before the meeting, I believe it was 2 or 3 days before, Jessica, we decided to move this outdoors. It was a great job by Jessica and the Board of Health and the moderator and the school staff to get together and get that set up outside for us. And as it was, we made quorum by, I think, about 4 people. People have suggested before that this board could have reduced the quorum, and we could have. We could have reduced our quorum, I believe, down to 12. But I think it's irresponsible to allow 12 people to vote a $12 million budget for a town. I hear the argument from some that, hey, fair enough, they don't want to come, they don't come. They're stuck with what we vote in. In a regular town meeting, I believe that. If people just don't want to show and they don't have an interest in how the money's spent, that's fine. The 50 people who show will spend it. But to have people scared to come to the meeting because of fear for their life from COVID or fear of any effects from the illness is not a reason to take away their right to have say on the money this town spends. So we were overall unwilling to reduce the quorum. If we couldn't get a sufficient quorum because people were scared for their health and safety, I don't think that was a justifiable reason to rush the vote. We would have had the meeting in another day. But that's why we did not reduce the quorum. It's also why we spent the CARES Act money the way we did. And as far as funding the police car, the only way we could have, fire chief car, the only way we could have done it was out of stabilization. And this board has worked very hard to bring our stabilization account up to what is considered a healthy level, which is 5% of our annual budget. And we're trying to move towards 10%, which is the preferred ratio, which means we'd like to build stabilization to $1.2 million. And that's there for emergencies. Making a purchase such as a vehicle, my opinion, and I will speak for myself only now, is a budgetary item for a fiscal year. And if we decide we need a bigger purchase, we can beyond that or find a way to fit a payment of a bond in. Or if people really wanted something major purchase, we could discuss a tax override. But so far, since I've been in office, and I don't think for Matt either, I don't think we've had a tax override yet or requested one, and I don't want to start that. And I don't want to start dipping into stabilization. If we can't fund items within our revenues for that fiscal year, then I don't want to fund the items. I think it's physically irresponsible to live outside our means. And that fire chief's vehicle at this point was not affordable without borrowing into our stabilization, which is, our emergency. But I do intend to see it on the budget for next year, and we will find a way to fit it in then. That was a good rant by myself. Matt, I will give you both equal time if you have things to comment on those. But I think it's important people are caught up to what's been going.
No, I think you pretty much said it. Yeah, I have nothing more to add. Thank you very much, Greg.
Dylan?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I have nothing to add to that. Beautifully spoken.
I'm very happy that our meetings are on Zoom and that the public can be involved and see us and hear what we have to say. We're trying hard to get the other boards and committees to participate via Zoom. We're having some difficulty with that, which is something we'll talk about in a minute in the Selectmen report. But overall, I hope the public feels that we are transparent. We're more than willing to explain, as people saw when they made their comments on Facebook. The three of us won't engage in dialogue about town business on Facebook. But the things that I did see transpire were explanations of what was done and try to tell people why. And I just wanted to clarify all that publicly here tonight. We want people to ask us questions. We want to be accountable for the things that we do and how we spend this town's money and the funds. And as far as the CARES Act money, the last thing to say is people are worried that, we're paying for it one way or another. If it came from the Fed, it's going to hit us in the federal taxes. But as I think Joshua, our moderator, had said, that there's every likelihood that our government is literally going to print more money. And what that effectively does in the macroeconomic scale is it reduces this country's dollar value to the rest of the world. When we just print money, we're not on the gold standard. It's not covered by anything. So the government can literally print this money. They don't have to reappropriate in taxes from the citizens. And what they've effectively done is reduce the value of the American dollar worldwide. Depending how they go, if they attempt to recover the tax money, then our dollar will be a little stronger worldwide. But if we as a town took a stand and said, we're not going to spend this money, it's a waste, then we'd be one of the few communities that's going to be paying for it without receiving a benefit for it. So for that reason, I was very much in favor of spending the money that we had from the CARES Act and make sure that we are, at least drawing as much as every other community in this country is drawn off of this. Yep.
One thing I'd add to that is, in case people don't realize, is the federal government gave Massachusetts a certain amount of money. They didn't tell Massachusetts to give Barre this amount of that. And then Massachusetts, I would say generally fairly, spread it out either by population or a couple other key factors. And so we got an allotment. But just so people know, if we didn't spend that, Massachusetts will spend it, either at the state level or reallocated to another municipality that can justify and need to spend more. This money is not going to go back to the federal government if we didn't spend it. So I just wanted to express that it's not likely that if we didn't spend it, we were going to save ourselves the tax burden. We would have just let someone else buy something for it, and then we still would have been paying the taxes on it.
If indeed they tax, and like I said, they may, I think it'd be very difficult for the government to try to recover this type of money in taxes. They're very likely to literally print it, let it devalue our dollar. That's why it used to be a few years ago, the English pound was, we could buy 50 cents of a pound. It's $2 to buy a pound. We're going to, treading back towards that again when we do things like this. it hurts our country, our large businesses when we trade worldwide because our dollar is worth less than others. So we can receive less goods and services in for that we put out. If that's what they do, but we're gonna find out. I don't think the government's given any plan for how they're recovering this money yet, or how they're allotting for it. They've just spent it, which is kind of spooky. But I assure everyone in town, we're not raising our taxes. We're not spending our tax money. We're not spending your property tax money or anything else on this. These are things that were funded federally for exactly these type of purchases. And they very rigidly control what we can spend the money on. Jessica, do you want to pipe in on that? Have any input before we move on? I'll give you a minute.
No, I think you did.
Okay. We have approval
Chair,
of
we
meeting
do have-
minutes.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, we do have a hand raised in the audience if you for you to entertain or not.
Who was raising their hand, Jessica?
Oh, Irene Stevens.
Welcome, Eileen. Welcome her in. She was the beginning of that Facebook post we talked about that brought this discussion on. Irene, welcome. You're muted if you are trying to talk to us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I just actually got on. I've had some trouble getting on Zoom, so I missed most of it. And I think you just know my questions and my concerns as an older citizen and the needs we have in spending money on a tangible item such as a tent. I'm just a little concerned about it, that's all.
Certainly. We did just cover that extensively.
Yes.
So if it did cut out on you, I'd suggest if you can find the YouTube link later and
Yeah.
watch the meeting, you'll be able to hear it. I think you'd be satisfied with the explanation that we gave.
That's,
And
I
it's
just found actually, I think a lot of us have some trouble getting on, connecting, and we're new to this, so it's kind of new for us. So, I appreciate it. I just have the concerns, that's all, about where we're going to go with this.
Yeah, and I recall, one of the things that you mentioned on Facebook, and I will bring up here at this point in the meeting, was the fact that as people retire in our town, they still pay their full taxes and tax changes. And Matt, you'll recall, one of the first things I suggested when I was in office is that we consider a moratorium on taxes for people who retire and their tax rates be frozen at their retirement age. And whatever portion is held back rolls into a lien against the property. So they can remain in their homes and remain in their properties. Once their retirement comes and their income is fixed, I had suggested that we consider fixing their taxes at that point as well. So it doesn't eat up a larger and larger portion of their spendable money as they retire. Then when they decide to sell their home and move someplace else, the balance of that, not forgiven, but delayed tax or accrued tax that we allow to accrue would be leaned against a property on sale. So they wouldn't have to pay that money out until the property was sold in the future. It was met with great opposition from the Finance Committee, and I don't recall. I don't think you and Selectman Chase at the time supported the idea either. But that is something that we've heard from Irene firsthand about, and it is something that does concern me. That seniors who are on a fixed income when they retire, that they face is increasing property tax. And if somebody makes it 15 years after retirement, they could be paying substantially more money in property tax and a higher percentage of their living income than they can afford. It does put constraints in the budget annually. We'd have to see how many people it might affect and how it would affect the budget before we can consider something like that. But I would like to propose we start looking into that and seeing if it is affordable. If it means we'd have to bump the tax rate to accommodate that, we put that to a town vote to see if the town is willing to do that for the seniors. because eventually this money will come back to the town. We're not forgiving the taxes. We're postponing any increases in taxes and accruing them until such a time as that property changes hands.
Yes, I just know when my mother turned 70 that she didn't have to pay taxes anymore, and I know that was a long time ago, but for some reason it wasn't like a loan or anything like that, a lien. It was just something they did for seniors. I mean, we're 80 years old, and I understand we do have the farm, but we're still paying very high taxes. And hopefully, when something happens to us, the farm's going to continue with the rest of the family. So we do have problems. This year we lost over $4,000 because of the hay crop. It was so poor this year, as everyone knows. It's just the weather. We have to depend on the weather, and we still have to pay the same amount no matter what. We don't get like a paycheck like everybody else. When you're farming, you have to make the money with whatever you can take in, and this year's been a tough year. So that's why I had some concerns about that. When you get to the our age, it's difficult.
Understandably so. We won't go too much into conversation because it's not really an agenda item, but I wanted to follow up because I know that was it was part of what you were on here for and part of the Facebook stream we'd seen from you, and I wanted to make sure we entertained it and bring it, to the attention of the other selectmen so that we can consider having a more in-depth discussion about this at one of our meetings soon, maybe in the end of January. I don't want to jump into it at this point of the year, but before we get too far in budgeting, start to kick it around and feel something like that out for the future. So,
Thank you.
All right, Nat, Dylan, want to make any comments about that or thoughts, brief, without getting too deep here?
Quickly, I'd say I'd love if we could add a little bit of on the to-do list for Jessica, if she could track down any municipal or any towns, similar demographic makeup to ours, similar budget constraints, similar demographics in terms of elderly population and whatnot. I would love to see some examples of this kind of policy change in action and what the pros and cons might be, so we can have an informed decision in the new year.
Matt, thoughts?
I'm open to listening to the topic, pursuing some of the information. Kind of as you had said, I would need the treasurer collector's office to review the revenues and the demographics related to those revenues, so we can kind of figure out the impact to the rest of the remainder of the population.
I'd be shocked even if we get into this soon, if this is something we'd have ready for the next fiscal year. But it needs to start somewhere. That's all. All right. We have correspondence from Insight. Dylan, do you want to read that for us?
Certainly. As soon as I find the correct attachment here.
All right. Jessica, any hints where that is in there for him? The donation from Insight.
It's a separate file.
I've found it.
Yeah, sorry, I had to send them all separately this time.
Totally fine. Okay, this is a letter from Insight Meditation Society, dated December 11th, 2020, to the Board of Selectmen, Town of Barre. Dear friends and neighbors, as this extraordinary year draws to a close, we are pleased to present to the Town of Barre donations in the amount of $29,000 for the year 2020. These gifts are from the Insight Meditation Society, the Barre Center for Buddhist Studies, and the Dhamma Vihara Foundation. While we recognize that our nonprofit status exempts us from paying local taxes, we know that the pain of this extraordinary year has been felt deeply by the town. Though our core businesses have been closed for much of this year due to the pandemic, we are happy and fortunate to be able to offer these voluntary contributions as an expression of our gratitude for the town's services and our 40 plus years as committed members and residents of the community. Thank you all for that this wonderful town offers to those of us who work and live in Barre, best wishes for a healthy and prosperous new year. Inger Forland, Richard Henning, and Joseph Goldstein from the Insight Meditation Society, Barre Center for Buddhist Studies, and Dhamma Vihara Foundation, respectively.
And the checks totaling for those three signatures are $29,000 of donations they've made to the town this year. Extend our thanks and appreciation. I would suggest we have Jessica send a letter of appreciation and thank you back to them. If you agree with that.
Absolutely.
I would like to sign that letter personally, and I would think you guys would as well. So if you could draft a letter for us, and we could stop in when it's ready and sign it, because I would like us to put our signatures. They signed this personally, and I think we should have respect and do the same. That is nice of them. We do have one set of minutes here from December 7th. Have you guys reviewed these? Do you need more time?
I've reviewed them and I have no comment. I'm comfortable with them as written.
Okay,
Same.
And I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. We accept the meeting minutes of December 7th, 2020.
I second that.
Motion is second to approve the minutes of December 7th, 2020. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Before we jump to selectmen reports, I will take a moment at this time to entertain any other public comment briefly. Jessica, the normal rules apply, please, and let me know if people are raising their hand or wanting to comment.
Yes, so I do know that Sam Limpson called my office earlier and requested to make a public comment tonight.
I'm very hesitant when it comes to Mr. Lipson specifically, and I'd ask if he gave you a topic he wants to bring up to public comment.
Yeah.
I've had some very negative experiences with the comments from Mr. Lipson in the past, and I hesitate to put him on open air without understanding in advance what he's going to talk about.
Yes, so he's interested in speaking on the Stetson issue from the previous week.
I'll entertain that for as I do for public comment. I'll give him 1 minute to share his thoughts on that, and then if the selectmen feel the need to comment back, we'll take it from there. But go ahead and bring him in, please.
Sam is currently muted. I'm not sure if he's aware of that.
Just sent him a message to unmute.
Hello.
Hello, Sam.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to comment to Greg O'Sullivan, and this is public comment and telling me and telling everybody that he doesn't think that I'm worthy to have public comment is really a slap in the face, and it's really disappointing. And I don't think that you have the right to do that. So let me get to my public comment. Number one, the town of Barre has been spending a lot of time and money. The chief has been spending a lot of time and money for the assistance of the Seven Hills, whatever organization you want to call it. And I think there's a cost involved. And I don't know how much the cost is, but I'm sure the chief could be clear as to what additional the town is spending on groups that don't pay taxes. And this can be quantified. And I think the town needs to send them a bill. Now, it's kind of interesting that the Seven Hills, the Insight Meditation Center gave $29,000. I think it's about time that the selectmen discuss with the Seven Hills organization. It's about time they start paying up. We, as citizens, are paying their taxes for them to bring in undesirables into our town who have a disease and let them run around and not be paid for it is unacceptable. And I don't think it's American either. And I don't think that our government would allow this to happen. So I think it's about time the selectmen get up to speed and do your job and make sure that we get paid for the services that we provide that to companies and organizations that don't pay taxes.
Thank you, Sam. That's I gave you almost 2 minutes.
Well, and I think transparency.
Gentlemen, I would give you an opportunity to respond if you wish to.
All I can say is that we don't have the ability to force them to pay us a dime due to their status and the way this state recognizes them and their purpose. So I appreciate your sentiments, Sam, but we have reviewed and looked into this. To get that money, we're either going to have to continue to pay it out of our own property taxes or see if at some point something more efficient happens with their budget and they find a way to give us a payment in lieu of taxes similar to Insight Meditation Society. And right now it does not sound like Seven Hills is interested in doing something like that, because that means they would have to do it for every facility they have in the state. And when they look at their big budget and the fact that they have hundreds of facilities in the state, they don't want to touch that. So we'll never see a dime from them outside of their, whatever they call it, the allowance they give kids and then encourage the kids to give a check to the local police station, which they have done. I think they gave $2,300 this last year, something close to that. So I just wanted to put it out there. It's not that they're doing nothing, but they are limited. We already talk about how they're not getting certain things done at Stetson, and some of that is also due to the fact they don't have a budget to do it. But I'm not going to sit here and say they're not a little top-heavy. Seven Hills, I don't want to necessarily say Stetson, but Seven Hills as an organization could be a little top-heavy. But there you go. That's all I got to say on that.
Thank you. Dylan?
I don't have much to add except that I think that we can get an understanding of if there are financial impacts as of late with Stetson for our emergency services. I think we can request that information and look at it going forward. But other than that, I have nothing more to add. Greg and Matt covered everything on my mind as well.
My only thoughts is the possible avenue we haven't looked into is that, I know on college campuses, and that's something different than this, they usually have their own private security. They hire police officers and they have their private police force on their campus and police themselves. And I don't know if there's a size requirement or at what point that trips was required, or if it's something we would be able to require. But certainly something that we discussed with the police chief, and something we could investigate. That we may have the ability to tell them that they, are drawing too much and they may have to self-police. I don't know. It's just putting it out there as a thought. One possible way, because then it would limit our need to be there at all. One other thing we didn't talk about when the chief was on earlier, and Jessica may recall, Stetson said they do have a grant that they give out. I believe it was something in the neighborhood of $30,000 that's available. And the chief had suggested a certain software program for mapping that they would like to get. Maybe the school would fund it. And that's when they commented that they have a grant that we could apply for. So, Jess, I don't know if you have looked into that, but I would suggest we do look into that grant and get John to look into it and see if we can apply for that grant money for them. Maybe we get something at least that way.
Yeah, Matt actually had just mentioned the grant that I think this year it was the fire department that had taken advantage of the grant.
But they indicated when we talked to them, there's still grant money available. It hasn't all been spent out yet.
Right.
So we certainly could ask for more. Selectmen reports. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Anything I've been tracking, just so you know, has already been addressed in today's meeting, so I've got nothing further to say in this area.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, I'll just be short and sweet. 2020 has been this is the last meeting of 2020, I do believe, of our board, and so I just wanted to thank everyone here, everyone listening at home. It's been a long, hard year. It's going to be a interesting and stressful winter for most of us. So I just wish everybody a safe holiday and a happy new year.
Very good, thank you. As I discussed earlier already, a large portion of my report would have been about the Stetson issue, which we covered when we had the chief on. We did have scheduled to be on tonight was Representative Berthiaume was going to come on and discuss the cable access issue with us. After we had our meeting with the Stetson facilities, I had some text messages with Representative Berthiaume, and I took that opportunity to ask him some marijuana-related questions. Specifically, we've discussed before as a board what happens when these host agreements run out. Do they expire? We rewrite them? And he said, no, the state's intent is we rewrite the host agreements and we continue to receive host money. I also asked him if the towns are obligated to spend it on issues caused by marijuana, if the state's going to be checking into that. And he said this year with COVID, no, but in the future, yes. They'll be ensuring that money is actually spent on issues caused by the marijuana. And then I suggested that perhaps we would have a need for emergency vehicles because these facilities are located on lawn, dirt, and muddy roads with all-wheel drive capability. He said that would probably be a wise avenue to go to use those funds if we find ourselves receiving money we don't have a way to use up. That might be a smart avenue to go with. And then I did ask also about retail marijuana, which I've mentioned a couple times before. I'm hoping that we could start looking into maybe tweaking our marijuana bylaws and finding a way that open up retail a little bit and get a shop in town before the state's oversaturated and you can't get another one. I don't know if Jessica has, we'll ask her in a minute, if she's found out what Lester's done on tax revenues from their retail shop. Something we asked her about at the last meeting, but I don't know if she's got there yet. But Representative Berthiaume agreed that the revenues from retail obviously are far higher than the wholesale. First of all, you're doubling your price to begin with, and it's not like one grow does a retail. Retail usually consumes a couple of grows, so there's a large potential for money. And I asked if we were allowed to tax that, because this is why I started with the host conversation. Concerned that the host agreement would be a one and done and run out, we'd have nothing. Could we instate a local tax instead? He said, absolutely not. We cannot create a local tax on it. But he assured us that the host agreements we do make for retail can work out whatever percentage is allowed. And that is something that we renew every so many years. So it does answer a question, Matt, that you and I have had over the years is what happens when this host agreement is done? We just miss out. And he said, no, the intent is to continue with another host agreement. So other than that, then we get into the conversation about cable. He indicated he had talked to Matt about it before, as we know. And he was asked actually to come talk to us as a board. And he said he'd do some research and come to us. But unfortunately, this is off the cuff when I asked him this, and he said he'd do it. And he found out that he double booked himself for this evening and he couldn't be here. So he agreed he'll come on I believe our next meeting will be the 4th of January, I think. January 4th is the Monday. And he agreed he would come to that meeting. So we'll be in touch with him again and hopefully get Jessica in touch with him. And he will be coming prepared to discuss the cable access issue. So if we can both, three of us, you two as well as myself, brush up on any concerns we have. Matt, you'd indicated before that some homeowners had indicated they got far lower estimates to bring cable to their house than we were given to bring it down the same area. Those are, if we're getting a different price for municipality than the citizens getting, I'd take great exception to that. I think the state would as well. So if we do have evidence of that anywhere, we should make sure we bring that together for the conversation with Representative Berthiaume. And I talked to someone just coincidentally, not 2 days after I talked to their representative. They were on tonight. It was John and Christina. They were having trouble with, because they don't have internet access, trying to get in. They had actually got about 14 people. They said, we're going to go down to the library and get internet access to join the Zoom meeting to have that discussion. So I expect we will see them in 2 weeks. They have a good group of people that's concerned about this. And they did want to express their opinion. And I encourage them to come forward, as I will encourage everyone else now. 2 weeks from this Monday, next Monday will be the January 4th will be our meeting. Representative Berthiaume has said he will join us. And I think the more people that come in and express their concerns, the better. And we intend to have the representative on between 6:30, 6:45 pretty early on in the meeting. And we'll see where it goes, but we want to discuss our options. As Matt said, maybe also upgrading, but to comment further on what Matt said earlier, I agree we should try to upgrade to fiber optic in places, but it's still my first priority to see cable go to all the houses. Before we think about upgrading, I really want to make sure that we get everybody some cable service so they get a reasonable internet access. And it's all things we'll discuss at that better detail. That concludes my selectment items. I will ask Jessica in her report to let us know if she discovered anything about the revenues in Leicester. And I will reiterate Dylan's wishes that everyone have a Merry Christmas and stay safe. See everybody in a couple of weeks till we're done here. Jessica?
Thank you, Greg. And so I don't have an update on those numbers. I was just trying to look through my email because I thought I had just talked about that recently, but I'm not able to find it right now off the cuff. So I can get back to you all on that. Other than that, these past 2 weeks have been kind of quiet. I was in MCPPO training 2 weeks ago, so which I passed that section of it. That week was kind of, I was all focused on that, and also I was focused on the Stetson issue. Other than that, I've been looking more into, getting started on our Community Compact IT grant. I've had a number of companies reach out to me recently, interested in taking advantage of the grant money that we got, because of course that's a very public grant. There's a lot of publicity that goes with it. So once vendors found out that we got that money for that specific purpose, a lot of people have been reaching out for me. So I've been focusing a lot on researching that information, and I'll be working with Ellen closely in the new year to make sure that we can get that system implemented. We have until 2020, the beginning of 2022, to spend all of that money. So that's exciting. And then I also wanted to touch base and mention that our budget season is underway. All of the department heads will have their budgets in the beginning of January, and then the formal budget season will start on January 21st with our finance committee. So here we are again, heading into the next fiscal year, looking a lot similar to what we were getting into last year. So, and other than that, I just want to say everybody have a happy and safe holiday. I know we have the two weekends coming up, Christmas and New Year's, and it'll be short weeks here at the town hall as the Henry Woods building will celebrate or recognize Christmas on this Thursday and recognize the New Year holiday on next Thursday. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and happy holidays to you.
Thank you.
That, gentlemen, is that. I have nothing more on the agenda here. I would look for the appropriate motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to second the motion to adjourn.
Motion is second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg